Systematic reviews and randomized trials are great at telling us what kinds of interventions tend to work, but they tend not to tell us how much they cost. The problem is that the cost of an intervention makes a huge difference when we're trying to decide what we should choose. Product Red was founded in 2006 by U2's frontman Bono to try to raise money for the global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. Basically, they partner with big brands like Apple and get them to donate a proportion of their income from certain products. Now, this has helped the global fund raise a lot of money. In 2019, it had received a total of $600 million from Product Red. Now, if you were trying to decide how to spend $600 million to fight HIV or AIDS, what would you spend it on? According to stuff like Systematic Reviews, the gold standard in HIV care involves regular visits with your doctor and a type of medication called antiretroviral therapy. The medication itself costs about $2,500 per month. Or in terms of things that are easy to understand, 4 whole birthday videos from Ice-T on Cameo.
Hey, what's up, Kate? Happy birthday.
Now, if I had HIV, I would probably spend that to stop it developing into AIDS. When thinking about your own health, most people in wealthy countries tend to think less about the cost of the treatment and more about the effectiveness. As I said, if I had HIV, I'd want the medication that works the best. Also, in many rich countries, there's funding available even for quite expensive treatments like this. For example, in the UK, the National Health Service will pay for treatments that provide 1 quality adjusted life year for £20,000. That's about 41 Ice-T cameos.
Happy birthday.
In other words, if antiretroviral therapy can extend your life by 1 year for every £20,000 spent on the treatment, then the UK government will pay for it. As someone with a similar system here in Australia, I'm really grateful the limit is so high. The problem is, many global problems are so big that we can't afford to use the best intervention everywhere. To stick with the example of HIV, there are about 40 million people living with the disease. Even if you had $600 million to spend, that's only $15 per person, a fraction of what it costs to get antiretrovirals for a single month. So what do? We might think the only option is to treat a fraction of those who need it. In some cases, that's all we can do, but it seems pretty grim. It means we're letting millions of people die. The other option is to try and find more cost-effective interventions, the ones that do the most good per dollar. Is there some treatment other than antiretrovirals that gets you more bang for the same buck? There are lots of interventions for treating HIV. The University of Oxford's Toby Ord summarised a range of them in his Centre for Global Development essay. As he outlines, you might choose surgical treatments for Kaposi sarcoma, which is an AIDS-defining illness. You might choose antiretroviral therapy to fight the virus in infected people. You might prevent the transmission of HIV from mother to child during pregnancy. You might distribute condoms to prevent transmission more generally, or you might provide education for high-risk groups like sex workers. Now, which of these do you think is most cost-effective? Without looking at the data, I actually find it hard to tell. For the cost effectiveness, we convert all the benefits into the same units, and then we see what gives us the most benefit for the same cost, say $1,000. The benefits for all these interventions are reported in Disability Adjusted Life Years, or DALYs, which we discussed in another video. Which of these interventions reduces DALYs the most per $1,000? As you can see, antiretrovirals end up far more cost effective than treating Kaposi sarcoma. They reduce about 50 times more DALYs per dollar than treating the sarcomas. But it's 5 times more cost effective again to prevent transmission from mother to child during pregnancy. It's then double the cost effectiveness to distribute condoms and double it again to provide education for high-risk groups. All of these doublings really add up. As Ord says, in total, the best of these interventions is estimated to be 1,400 times as cost effective as the least good, or more than 1,400 times better than it would need to be funded in rich countries. Condoms and education are just so much cheaper than surgeries or antiretrovirals. So even if antiretrovirals are better, the cost effectiveness is so much lower. Now, in a perfect world with unlimited resources, we could pursue all of these treatments. In our world, where we have a fixed amount of money, we have to choose, even when we have $600 million to spend. So here, the choice can be between saving 100 lives with the right education and saving 1 with the best treatment. To choose 100, we'd need to focus less on the best treatment and focus more on the most cost-effective ones, the ones with the biggest effect for the amount that they cost. This is pretty intuitive in our own lives when we're making personal decisions. We're just applying the same intuition to helping others. When you're choosing a computer to buy, you don't just want the most powerful computer. You can buy a Mac Pro for $15,000. And yeah, it'd be more powerful than my laptop, but I don't care if it's painted red or plated gold. For $15,000, I hope it comes with Bono himself to make tea while I set it up. We find the same thing with meals or wheels. A caviar banquet in a Bugatti might be the fastest, fanciest meal you could get, but I don't think any of us would actually want it given the price. We all want the best we can find for the cost, not just the best we can find. Now for me, it feels uncomfortable putting a price on a life. Lots of us were brought up feeling like life was sacred or priceless. But if we don't bother to calculate the cost, then lots of sacred lives get lost. Now it's tricky calculating costs and benefits when it comes to doing good. Part of the reason for this is that the consequences aren't always obvious. For example, a few years ago, the city of Athens tried to cut down on pollution and congestion. They did it by putting in rules where you could only drive in the city centre every second day. It depended on whether you had an odd or an even number plate. It kind of makes sense, right? Should halve the traffic. Although what happened instead was that many people ended up buying a second car with a different number plate, which was usually older than the first one, so more likely to pollute. This meant that the congestion in Athens stayed almost the same, while the pollution actually got worse. These are called second-order consequences. They're the indirect or unintended results of interventions that are particularly hard to predict. Coming back to treating HIV, even though antiretrovirals don't look like the most effective, the US government spent $15 billion on them to slow the AIDS epidemic. One of the reasons it worked so well was that this much money helped bring down the costs of the treatment. Bringing down the price of medications was a second-order consequence of choosing this expensive treatment. But to be fair, we don't know what would have happened if you spent $15 billion on the other treatments as well. All this is to say that it's hard to put the right numbers on the costs and the benefits. A birthday message from Ice-T is priceless, but you need to price it somehow.
This is awkward.
All this is to say that it's hard to put the right numbers on costs and benefits, and you should still try to put numbers on them. Given how hard it is to be precise, you might put a range instead of a single number, so you can see how your results change in the best case and the worst case. Maybe you're sure that condoms cost between 10 cents and $1. You might see how the cost effectiveness changes when you put in these different numbers. In this version of the plot that we saw above, you can see how uncertain we are about some of the AIDS treatments. But even with some uncertainty, these numbers will still help you make a decision. No amount of sugarcoating is going to make the surgery as good as antiretrovirals. Some treatments look 10 to 100 times more cost effective than others. Now again, it can feel hard to put a value on a life, but most of us would value 100 lives over one. When we actually look at the cost effectiveness of the ways we try to do good, then we refuse to let 99 lives slip away that we could otherwise save, because that would be too high of a price.